But how did it all go? What was that experience like of creating that and getting WhatsApp set up?
Well, I mean, the nice thing was from our side of the fence is that because we were already using the omni-channel API, it was just adding another channel in there. It was the same message structure. We've spent time upfront making sure that our system is scalable. It's a product; it has to be scalable. Whenever we add a new thing, it can't break our existing setup. So that was quite nice and easy on that front. The biggest difference, as I pointed out in the demo, was the templates. Sending an SMS and sending a Viber is quite nice and easy because it's up to you what you want to enter in there. And we can, on the Salesforce side, Salesforce provides some things like quick text we can kind of hook into and utilize. For the WhatsApp template, because you have this very structured setup that has to be approved by Meta, that has to follow a certain format, that was where any of the difficulty is. And I don't know if the kind of list you had up earlier of the kind of steps. You and I have been through this process now with a couple of customers, kind of getting them onboarded. And in my mind, the first two steps of the prerequisites are really down to the customer as to how quickly they can get Meta set up, how quickly they can get a phone number, how quickly they can, that's something that we have little control over, but is, fairly standard to go through. The kind of actual sending part, well, as you can see, once you've got your template set up and ready, that's pretty easy as well. It's that middle part of getting the templates set up, getting them approved. Meta has limitations as to how often you can edit the templates as well. So, we had one instance where we had someone who created the template and then thought, oh, wait, no, I want to change it immediately. And obviously you can't change it for 24 hours. And that was a minor frustration to them. But
be very sure before you hit that button.
Yeah. So, so that's kind of the biggest thing that was different. But not insurmountable. And so our intent with this was to say, well, we'll manage that template in Salesforce to a degree going forward as well to make it easy and so that we can add in some automation. My advice to people looking to go and figure out how they want to use WhatsApp messaging is to figure out how you're going to manage that template system. If you're building a product like we are, there needs to be some form of template management for you to kind of, know that you've got a consistent output. If you're doing it for your own integrations and you're just doing it kind of ad hoc in your own system, again, just think about how you keep those two in sync would be my kind of big thing to think of. At the moment for us, it's a manual process, but hopefully we can
and maybe start quite simple, almost recreate what you're sending on via SMS rather than getting too distracted by all the new features that WhatsApp offer. How would you recommend getting started?
Yeah, simple. I always tell customers to start with the simplest option, and it's because you'll get the quickest ROI and feedback. One of the things I think that people need to remember with any of these messaging items is that you can send messages, find they're not working, and then change things. But if you've spent 3 weeks building out that message, you're going to be really, really hesitant to change it, or it's going to feel very costly to change anything afterwards. So, I always say start simple. My advice to customers as they come onto our platform is normally start out with SMS and then build up from there, because you can guarantee everyone has an SMS account. You can guarantee people are receiving them. You can see what your feedback and retention numbers are like. SMS is still top in terms of opening. It's still very, very widely used. But then as you want to start doing more rich things or having interactivity such as buttons, such as feedback, such as links, that's where you can really work with WhatsApp or Viber, depending upon the market, and go from there. Because if you invest a lot of time in the follow-on process, you need to make sure that's nailed down. So when someone clicks that link or clicks that button, what's that going to do? Because you can't have it do nothing. Whereas with SMS, you don't have that same concern necessarily off the bat. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think we recommend something very similar to our clients of taking quite a stepped approach. You'll often hear WhatsApp themselves talking about becoming conversational, very interactive and using all the features, but that can be quite a big leap for customers. So maybe initially you just think about your goal as cost optimization. You're going to use WhatsApp where it makes sense because it's cheaper than SMS, and you're going to send the same content out and really just treat it as a cost optimization channel. Maybe your next step is then to start thinking, okay, we've got some of these features, let's start experimenting and see if we can improve conversion and then maybe down the line you might get more conversational. So definitely not try to do everything at once, but take quite a bite-sized approach.
Yeah, and
With
I
those
think
templates, how long did that approval process take?
I mean, the
Was that
ones
long?
that I was working with are pretty simple. So, sort of about half an hour.
Right.
Meta are really good in notifying you when it's updated. I did have one actually yesterday that was the longest one it's taken for me, and that was 3 hours, which
Mm-hmm.
was a single word change. So I don't know why that one took 3 hours, but
Mm-hmm.
typically, yeah, your first ones you can put out there. The way that Meta works with these things, obviously, is that as you put them out there and start sending them, they then have a quality metric and score. So again,
Mm-hmm.
this is why it's always good to start simple. Make sure you're doing the basics right and getting a good quality metric back, rather than just trying to do all things for all people and then having to stumble and fall through those first. I think it's the first 1,000 messages, isn't it? Really kind of
That's
matter.
right. Yeah, we talked about the sort of scaling up you'll need to do in the last webinar. So again, if you want to catch up on that, go and recap there. But essentially, they limit the number of messages until basically they're confident you're not sending lots of spam out on the platform. I think that's what they're looking for. Make sure that quality score is high, and then they'll automatically unlock. It does happen fairly quickly, assuming you're sending good content and you're not getting blocked or reported. Within a week you could be sending hundreds of thousands. It's not too much for a blocker, but it's kind of sensible as well from a customer point of view to maybe start a bit smaller, just start sending a portion of traffic to it, and then gradually build that up as you learn.
Yeah, I think one of the things, just to kind of follow up on that as well, that is a bit more, I suppose, perhaps from maybe the Salesforce side, but the business system side is having those business processes in place. There's one customer we were talking to who wanted to have all this kind of backwards and forwards messaging and kind of links and quick replies and buttons. And then when I said to them, "Great, well, who's going to pick up the next step?" I was in there with their consulting team, and it suddenly was like, who is going to do this job? It's all well and good having people start replying, but the chap I was dealing with said that it would end up going to his inbox, and he did not need 3,000 messages a day from people asking questions. So it's
right.
a good
I think
way
this
to
is why
start.
conversational is a much bigger step, because there's a lot of sort of operational and software considerations that you're going to need to think about.
Definitely.
Well, now that you've done it, is there anything you wish you'd known up front, that would have led you to do things differently?
I don't think we'd have done too much differently, except maybe I'd have maybe spent more time dealing with the template side up front. It is, the rest of it is just like sending any other message. Once you've got your template message structure sorted and you can get that template structure out, you're calling exactly the same endpoint on Messente. It's very, very simple and easy. You're getting the same sort of response codes back. Everything's dead easy on that integration side of things. The difficulty is in having often the marketing or operations team and the technical team agreeing what the template looks like, agreeing how it functions, and making sure that it stays in sync. Now, when we say in sync, it's important to know that you don't actually have to have all of the content in sync. You just need to, in your request, have the parameters correct and in sync, because it will populate them in there. But again, I really recommend just spending a bit of time up front with that. That would be the one thing that, if I had the chance to go back and do differently, is that I'd have taken this and worked harder on the templating piece up front, rather than we spent a lot of time figuring out the making it easier for people to send messages, rather than making it easy for people to create the templates up front first. If that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. And if people who haven't looked at them yet, normally in the omni-channel API, you put out the full body of the message. WhatsApp is slightly different. You reference the template you want to send, and then the only bits you need to put in is if you're using any variable parameters, like where you demonstrated inserting somebody's first name. So if you aren't using any of those, there's actually nothing to put in other than reference the template. But lots of people probably would. But maybe a good tip is to start, whilst you're getting other things in place, actually start playing around with those templates and getting happy with the content, using the tools that are there. I know you've helped customers with it. We're also very happy to help customers with templates. So that's a good place to partner, maybe.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there about the not having to use the parameters is that it goes back to that kind of migration path and simplicity, is that just because you have have the ability to do all of these things doesn't mean you need to do them on day one. Day
Right.
one can just be sending what was your SMS, but very simply. That can just be it for day number one if that's all that you want to get started as just adding it as a channel.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I'd like customers to have is don't feel you have to do everything at once. Start small, have a single goal in mind, go after that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was great. I mean, that looked highly functioning. Are you done with the integration, or is there anything more you want to do with it?
So there's always more we want to do with things. So the focus for our the next big focus for us is kind of working on the quick replies, managing them, and managing inbound in general. So we were midway through working on an inbound messaging structure setup to kind of improve our routing, integrate better with Salesforce Service Cloud, and then WhatsApp came along on the Messente roadmap and was integrated. So we thought, let's figure out outbound and do that. So that's really what we're looking at. The other thing that I'd really love to do is just that template management. Just keep on making that simpler, easier, more effective. Ideally, long term, I'd like to have the templates in Salesforce be pulled from Meta so that you're not creating them in Salesforce. We're pulling them down, synchronizing that way, or working, integrating with Messente some way to do that, so that you're really just stating this is the target for the parameter, rather than having to recreate everything, because it's just keeping things in sync as teams update and teams change going forward.
Yeah, it's template management is also something I'll mention a bit in a sec on our roadmap of for outside of the Salesforce environment. We've had customers asking us for how we can make that easier. So that's something we're planning on looking at as well.